AIM-listed Ariana Resources is a gold producer. It's announced that it's maintained its full-year production target at its long-held Kızıltepe mine in western Turkey at 18,000 ounces for the full year. But at the same time, it's now also being allowed to recommence the construction of its Taran mine, where the company's in among its first gold pour. It's expected from the facility in the first half of next year. Exciting times for the company. The chief executive is Dr. Kerim Sener, and he joins us now on the line from Perth, Australia. Kerim, welcome. Let's pick up first of all, if I can, with the first half, the Kızıltepe production around 20,000 tons of ore, I believe, which will give you something like around about 9,600 ounces of recorded gold, I believe, in the first half. So you've got this projection at 18,000. How do you feel about things now for the full year? Do you think that 18,000 could well be beaten in terms of the overall production for this year?
It could well be beaten. We're certainly on track. If you look at our half-year numbers, we're actually above our expectations for that period. And average monthly mine production has been maintained at really solid levels, over 20,000 tons of ore a month. And we retain a very decent stockpile of material that would last 3 months through to the end of the year, if necessary.
Just remind us how the company's put together and the business model, because not all that is attributable, of course, ultimately to shareholders, is it? Because you share this around.
That's correct. So Kızıltepe is owned through the Zenit Madencilik JV. So that's now a three-way partnership with Presea Construction, who remain managers of the operation, and Özaltın Holdings that own 53% of the total JV.
Yeah. Looking as well at the cost per ounce, we're hearing from a lot of mining companies, most recently, of course, the mining giant BHP talking about the uplifting costs. Inflation is definitely hitting the sector. How are things in terms of the cost per ounce, the amount of money it costs to get this out of the ground and get it through the system so it becomes a profit on the P&L? What is the cash cost at the moment? Is it going up?
Yes, so the last full year cash cost calculations that we did were based on year-end 2022, and we looked back as well right to the beginning of the operation in 2017 to see how our overall cash costs have tracked since that time. So, I mean, it's pleasing to report that our average cash costs at the end of last year were just under $650 per ounce. So that's the C1 operational cash cost recorded at the mine. I think costs, realistically, they are increasing now, and we'll be doing further cash cost calculations through this year. And I would imagine that they'd be up at the sort of 750 sort of level at the present time. And part of the reason for that is that we are mining lower grade parts of the Kızıltepe ore body now. And in addition to that, you know, inflation, as you say, has had an effect. Now, Turkish inflation, you know, it's been running fairly hot in recent times, but the Turkish lira has devalued against the dollar. So the overall effect of inflation, I would say, has been somewhat mitigated by that aspect. So yes, costs are rising. Overall, our input costs are rising, but because we're earning US dollars, yet paying for operational needs in Turkish lira, we are at some advantage.
Yeah, and of course, one of the ways in which a company can diversify its risk, of course, is to open up other operations. And I noticed actually with interest, and I guess pleasing for investors, is the fact that you've following the temporary suspension of the construction activities in March at the Tavşan mine, construction's now been allowed to go ahead again. Remind us what the procedure was and the reason why this went into shutdown for a while, and what was the catalyst that's brought it back online?
Yes, so back in the early part of this year, March, we had to move into a suspension of activities that was ordered by the Kütahya local court relating to certain objections that had been raised by a local group associated with certain aspects of the environmental impact assessment. So what that meant was we had to reach out to a new expert panel. That expert panel came in. A number of the panel members are associated with academic institutions in Turkey. They had to make a new report, submit that report to the court. That process took a couple of months. And then shortly after the Turkish elections, we heard the good news that the court had ruled in our favor, in the company's favor, Zenit Mining. And we were able to recommence operations and get the construction teams back on site. So I was there only a couple of weeks ago, and it was fantastic to see the construction team well underway with the recommencement of construction operations.
And you got, my understanding is a first pour expectations of just around about what, sometime first half next year, I think, is that right?
First half of next year, all being well. And part of this is weather dependent in relation to the laying down of the heap leach liners and the final preparation of the phase 1 heap leach pad, as well as the associated works on the ADR part of the plant and the crushing part of the plant. But most of those components are in fact ready to go. Some of them are on site, but assuming that we're not held back by weather on the heap leach, then we should be in very good shape for first gold in the earlier part of that H1 period of next year.
Yeah, it costs a lot of money, of course, to bring a mine up to speed so it starts production. Are you using purely profit from Kızıltepe and other operations in the business to pay for this?
Correct.
You say you've got these joint ventures. I guess there's a contribution from other parts of the business as well. Is that right? Or is this going to be 100% owned, Tavşan?
So Tavşan is owned by Zenit Madencilik, so the same partnership that I mentioned earlier with Özaltın Holdings and Prosea Construction, Prosea in management control, and it's their construction team that's currently on site. So that's the funding for Tavşan is being derived from Kızıltepe profits in its entirety. So we haven't reached out for bank debt associated with the Tavşan mine build. And that's certainly been a real benefit, particularly as we had to suspend operations for about 4 or 5 months. If we were burdened by debt through that period, that would have potentially been problematic. So we're in really good shape, and the build is well underway, and we're well on track to meet our expectations for the first half of next year.
Just quickly return to Kızıltepe. I should have asked you this actually when we were talking about it. My understanding as well is you've extended the mine life there as well. Is that correct?
We haven't. I wouldn't say that we've extended mine life beyond what our expectations were going back to the early part of last year when we announced an update to our reserve position. So that situation hasn't changed dramatically. However, our confidence in those reserves has been improving as we've continued drilling at Kızıltepe. So our expectations for mine life at Kızıltepe are as they were. However, we've now got an opportunity to expand on that mine life based on the results of that recent expansion drilling that we've undertaken, particularly on some of the satellite prospects, such as the Kepez West area. The rig is, in fact, it's just moved down from the Karakabak prospect to Kepez, and it's drilling its first hole again in the Kepez North area, with the possibility of expanding the Kepez North deposit itself. So there are a number of indicators that would suggest that we have the opportunity to expand on the resource and reserve base going forward.
Yeah, and of course, as I said, in the spirit of trying to diversify, you've also got some work going on in Cyprus, my understanding Venus Minerals, but also there's some exploration going on in Kosovo as well. So exciting times. Your inbox must be full of all these projects and demands that's been pulled in on your time. Whereabouts else are you looking in terms of your efforts at the moment to push the company ahead? Is it Kosovo? Is it Cyprus? Where is the main other activity coming from?
Yes, well, we're as you mentioned, we're quite well spread across those project interests, and the good thing is that we're backed up by solid local teams. So, be it in Kosovo, we've got a great team out there. Part of the exploration in Kosovo is, of course, being funded by Newmont. So, the exploration alliance that we have running in the country and surrounding regions. We've also completed an agreement on the Slivova gold project with a Canadian company, Minerals, and that project is going to become a key component of the Kosovo strategy going forward. And that's being run largely by the Kosovan team. Likewise in Cyprus with Venus Minerals, a good local team there carrying those exploration programs forward in advance of the planned IPO of Venus on AIM. And we also have other project interests through our Asgard Metals Fund here in Perth. And we're distributed across a couple of different projects, be it here in Western Australia, Laos, and Kazakhstan. So, and in each of those cases, we've got good local teams that are actually doing the work on the ground. So, yes, the inbox is full, but it's all exciting work, and the team's very much motivated across the board to ensure that we achieve exploration success wherever we're looking.
Yeah, the other thing I want to talk to you about is Venus Minerals. As I said, this is a business which I believe is in Cyprus, isn't it? Where there is the potential, I think, for this to be floated as an independent company on the London AIM market. Is that how much of a concrete event is this now?
Yes, so we're just finishing off dotting the I's and crossing the T's and on the prospectus documentation. There's the associated work that's being undertaken by the brokers Tavira, and the components of that IPO are more or less ready to go. So in part, of course, it's always going to be market dependent on exact timing. But we're looking forward to seeing that successfully list on AIM in the coming period.
And I should say, of course, this is what, a 58% interest, I believe. So it's a fair whack. And so what will happen then with the relationship between Ariana and Venus? Will Ariana hold a sizable chunk of this as an invested party, or what's the plan?
Yes, so we'd continue to hold a fairly sizable chunk of Venus Minerals. We are intending to raise a few £1 million for Venus. And then once that happens, we will be diluted in part, but we will continue to retain a strategic investment in that company going forward.
Yeah, let me bring up a share price chart, because I think it's interesting in the context of what we've been talking about. There's been a nice little bit of a rally away from the recent lows, which in fact hit levels not seen since March 2020 in the last few weeks or so. Let me just ask you what's in the share price. I often like to talk to chief executives about what is being priced in. I mean, you've got no direct control over, obviously, over the share price itself. All you have to do is to perform to your the forecast and so forth. So what is being priced in? Is any of the other elements of what we've been talking about, other than Kiziltepe and the production there, is any of it priced in at the current levels, which gives you a market value of what, 36 million?
Yes. So I would argue that not all components of our business are being priced in. So there's obviously an important contributing factor from Kiziltepe, the operating mine. I think that there has been relatively little contribution from Tavşan, and in part that has been down to the development timeline on Tavşan, and also, going back, only a month or so, the uncertainty associated with the project build, despite the build having been started last year. And when we went into suspension, yes, that had an effect on the share price. We did go we lost a little bit of ground there, but not drastically so. And we've come back now, and so perhaps there's some recognition there of the value of Taran to the company. But then you think about other components of the existing partnership that we have in Turkey relating to the Salınbaş project, which is the largest single asset in the group. And that drilling program is continuing. What we've announced to date has continued to reinforce our understanding of the exploration and development opportunity at Salınbaş and surrounding prospects. I don't think much of Salınbaş is priced in, unfortunately. I think that the market is tending not to price in exploration assets of that nature to any significant degree, which is unfortunate, but that's the reality of the market we find ourselves in. And then in other components of our interests, 75% stake that we have in Kosovo and related projects in the Balkan regions. What is really priced in there? It's difficult to say.
Yeah.
But each of those components of our business have a value, and whether the market realizes that value or not right now is that's just something that the market has to decide. But we see the value. We very clearly see the value. We see the exploration opportunity and upside across all of the projects that we're interested in, and all the work that we do is fundamentally value accretive. So sooner or later, the market might catch up.
Let me just bring up a chart of gold as well, which obviously has a direct relevance to you. And look, I know you're a geologist. I know you're not a gold analyst as such, but you must obviously be talking to the right people to give you an idea, and you've got to make plans based on the future expectations. We saw this chart goes back to 2015, but we saw that record high in August 2020, and we've had a couple of near touches in the last couple of years or so. Where is it going? What are you hearing? What are you telling investors about the outlook? And obviously, it does have a material impact on your profit potential.
Yes, and obviously we do have our longer term plans, the financial models that we put together for the various operations and the optimizations that we do on the open pits at Kızıltepe, the planning associated with Taran and so on. We're putting certain projections in place for each of those. And what I would say is that over the last few years, the gold price input into our open pit optimizations has only ever increased. And would you believe Kızıltepe was originally optimized at just over $1,000 per ounce on its pits, and progressively over the years, that price has increased, and we're now optimizing at $1,800 an ounce. Where I see gold price going longer term, I think we are in an interesting situation, geopolitically, financially, globally. There's certainly a lot of interest continuing from the central banks. The Turkish central bank is a particularly good case example of this, of central bank buying of gold. So there is a certain platform of strength on which we are building our business, and it would be a little hard to imagine how that situation would change drastically the other way. We're obviously comfortable where we are, given our production costs, where they sit. We are in the sort of approaching lower quartile of the production costs globally. So we're in good shape in that respect, and the margins on our business are high. If the gold price sort of retains these sorts of levels, we're on comfortable ground.
Okay, Kerim, look, as ever, it's a pleasure. Thanks indeed for your time. It's good to be able to catch up with you and hear the latest as of this moment at Ariana Resources. And look forward to speaking to you again sometime soon. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Jeremy.
That's Dr. Kerim Sener. He's the Chief Executive of London AIM-listed Ariana Resources.